So it's Friday. It's time for another Umbraco U Hangout, and today I'm joined with Dan Lister. How you doing, Dan?
Not bad yourself, Warren?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad.
Cool.
So as always, at this kind of the introduction point of the show, always kind of get people to introduce themselves. So maybe kind of Dan, what's your kind of background with Umbraco? How did you get involved?
Okay. Well, about three and a half years ago, I worked at an agency in Manchester called Amaze.
Yep.
That's kind of where I got my first introduction to Umbraco. Then about 2.5 years ago, I took the big step to the old contracting freelance world. And ever since then, I've been working with a company called RB, who have about 50 Umbraco sites. So I've just been helping them kind of manage their deployments, trying to get an idea of how they want to use Umbraco within for their brands anyway. So that's
Fantastic.
it. We've been using this about 3.5 years. Not too bad.
Yeah, so obviously I would imagine so around version 4 then, but obviously made the transition from XSLT over to Razor and obviously all the MVC goodies.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. So was there any kind of reason why you chose Umbraco? Was it kind of just because the agency you worked at the time was using it, or was it kind of, oh, you're the developer, go and find a CMS, or what was the choice really behind it?
Well, I predominantly used Episerver prior to that. I'd used it for about 2 years before. Yep. Obviously, Episerver costs money, and
yep.
Umbraco seemed like
money as well.
Yeah, it seemed like a good alternative, and it's actually it's not similar, but it's similar in some respects, like it used to be. So yeah, and fortunately, Amaze had a few Umbraco projects because they wanted to keep costs down as well. So yeah, I mean, I've never looked back since. It's been a great product.
Yeah, fantastic. So today you're going to be talking about how working with Umbraco in kind of the cloud platforms, so obviously things like Azure and kind of Amazon AWS. So is there kind of is it quite complex to kind of work with these platforms? I know that people have tried before and have had difficulties in the past. I know that over the years it's got a lot better than it previously was. But so yeah, what's your kind of experiences with it all?
I think, in terms of complexity, it can be as complex as you want it to be. For example, Azure websites, you can literally just use it as an FTP client and just upload Umbraco, and it'll just work.
Okay.
If you want scaling, both up and out, it's a bit more complicated. AWS, that's a bit more complex than Azure because you've got kind of a lot more things to use. So yeah, I was going to talk about auto scaling Umbraco sites in AWS, and then give you the side of the coin to do with Azure websites and how you automate, or how I automate Umbraco with that, and try and convince people not to use build servers.
Fantastic.
Oh, sorry, hang on, that was the wrong phrase. Not replace. But you can kind of replace things like TeamCity with Azure websites.
Okay.
So I'm going to try and show that and hopefully demonstrate it well.
Fantastic. So do you want to jump on and do some screen share or something?
Let's go screen share desktop. So hopefully you should be able to see your own face.
I certainly can.
Cool. Right, so firstly I'll show how I use auto scaling within AWS. So what that means is I have an Elastic Beanstalk application. I've got an Umbraco in there, and depending on certain loads and network traffic, you can scale it out and up depending on what's going on. So the first thing I'll do is probably just show you how I get an Umbraco site up to the cloud, as they say. So in AWS, I go to my Elastic Beanstalk applications. I'm going to create a new one called U Hangout. So
this is kind of like a site. If you imagine this is an Umbraco site or an application that I want to deploy. So you're creating, what was it, a new Beanstalk? Sorry, not overly familiar with AWS.
It's a new Elastic Beanstalk application. So an Elastic Beanstalk application is like a container for lots of different things like load balancers, EC2 instances, which are just servers, IPS instances, and it allows you to version things, create different environments within your application.
Okay.
It's quite flexible.
Okay.
You can do lots of stuff with it, which hopefully I'll show.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Sorry, carry on.
So this process I'm going through now is actually creating the Elastic Beanstalk environment. So it's where you choose what kind of server you want, things like the actual database servers if you want, things like that, and other stuff. So the first screen is to basically just select what kind of application you want. So it's a web server I want.
Yep.
A Windows server, and I want it to be load balanced and auto scaled. So I'll click next.
Okay, cool.
We'll just use a sample application for the meantime. So going back on what I was saying before, every Elastic Beanstalk application can have multiple environments. So you can kind of see them as like dev, production stage, and whatnot.
Yep.
So for this instance, we'll just create one environment, and we'll just leave it as the U Hangout environment.
Yep.
On to next. So we want to create an RDS instance in our environment. It's just a database server. That's all it is, really. Just a SQL Server instance. Cool. These are just some configuration details. So we've got the type of servers we want behind.
Okay, so I presume this is kind of processing and RAM and disk space that the server has. Okay.
Yeah. So you've got kind of memory-intensive servers. You've got compute-intensive servers and network stuff. I just use Micro because it's free.
Yep. Fair enough.
But the key tags, I've already done that. That's pretty much it for that one. Environment tags, so these are kind of configuration values for your environment which actually get passed to the application so you can use it in runtime.
Okay.
I'll show you that later on, but it's quite cool. This is our RDS instance configuration, so we want to choose the type of database we want. So we want SQL Server Express. Again, we'll have a micro instance. We'll give it 30 gig of storage. Next. So just gives you a summary and launch. So what I'll go off and do now, we create kind of a few things. We'll create our EC2 instance, our load balancer, our cloud watches, and our RDS instances. And this process usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes.
Because I presume this is spinning up kind of fresh machines in the cloud.
Yeah, that's correct. So while that's doing that, I'll go and create my Umbraco application. So it's from Visual Studio, wherever it is. Finishes loading. File, new project. So we just create a normal web application.
Yep.
Call it U Hangout. Just an empty one will do for the meantime. Once that's finished, we'll install Umbraco.
Okay, so you can install it via NuGet then?
Yeah.
Cool.
I quite enjoy installing it this way. Don't know why. It just seems to work quite well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The days of extracting zips and checking file permissions and no longer.
Yeah, definitely. And it's great with all the other dependencies and stuff like that. It just works seamlessly.
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully this will be quick. It was when I was testing it before, or last night.
It's always the way when you do a demo.
Yeah. Fortunately, I've got a backup, so I'll be alright.
Getting there, nearly done.
Yeah, almost. Go on. There we go.
Okay. So how do we get, so whilst this is doing it, so how do we kind of get this application or our test Umbraco site to Amazon? Is it just FTP? Is it some magic web deploy? Is it some other build process that kind of gets it deployed out to
there are a couple of ways. Oh, there we go. I'll just ignore that for the meantime. Yeah, there are a couple of ways. You can use, there's a command line tool called AWS Deploy,
Yep.
which basically I can't remember. It's kind of on one. You set it up once and you forget about it.
Okay, so you can just run a batch file or run a command line prompt and just push the project.
Yeah, packages up your application, then it goes off to wherever it needs to go. Okay, that didn't work, so I'm going to go to my backup. The second way you can deploy applications to Amazon is if I find mine. Second one.
Blue Peter style. Here's one I made earlier.
Yeah. So the steps I've kind of missed out is obviously the Nugget installation didn't really work.
Yep.
The steps after that, I was going to run the application and install Umbraco. I was going to install Umbraco against the RDS instance created with your environment.
Okay.
So
configure the database to use the database that you've created. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of only a one-time thing. Obviously, you wouldn't really do that every now and again. You probably just use a local database for that, and then push it up to your environment, however you mean to do it.
Yeah. Has Amazon created just the SQL Server, or has it created SQL Server and the database ready for us?
Just SQL Server.
So you would need to use Management Studio or something similar, or the command line tools to connect, create a database, and then obviously use that in the installation to update.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So fortunately, in my second application, I've already done that.
Fantastic.
This is not going well so far, is it?
Always the way. Always the way when you do live demos.
Fortunately, I have a third one. Let's try and get this one working. Oh, amazing.
Close Visual Studio. Sometimes it freaks out. Close it and give it a kick.
Yeah. Right. Let's try the second one again. Come on. It's promising. There we go.
There we go. Just needed a kick. Needed a kick.
Right. So for my second application, I've already actually set up the database and everything. So it's just a bog standard Umbraco application with starter kit installed. I'll just actually play it just to show you.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
I never understand why that happens the first time you run the application from it being installed via NuGet. I never get that, but
Yeah.
Second time you do it, it never happens.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Anyway.
So hopefully this will work.
Yep.
So this is actually using the RDS instance in my application.
Okay.
So probably
as opposed to kind of the SQL CE database option that kind of is the default in Umbraco.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it'll probably be a bit slower than usual. So while that's doing that, I'll show you actually how you get the application up. In fact, there's no point me showing that because it's just a page. So there's a nice little plugin for Visual Studio where you get some additional options on context menu. So you can publish to AWS. So this is where you can set up applications. So I've already got this one set up already. So I can literally just plow through it.
So I presume the extension, you give it kind of your base credentials, and then you'll be able to see all the environments that you're able to push to.
No, it's slightly different. You have to know the name of the environment prior to going through this process. So you have to be specific about where the application, so the environment you're deploying to. So I mean, I've already set this up in the past. So obviously, you create a new version, label for it.
Yeah.
You can use an existing environment, or you can create a new one if you want.
Okay.
I won't do that one because it'll take too long. Some other options. Click next. Next again, and then deploy.
Okay, so it's relatively next type of publishing and packaging up to Amazon then.
Yeah, that's correct.
So is it generating like a zip of the site and then pushing that and then extracting it at the Amazon end? Do you know kind of the process behind the scenes, what it's doing?
I think it's called a web archive deployment file.
A web archive? That sounds very very technical.
The exact name, it's something like that. It's pretty much just a zip file containing all the application files and other things related to the deployment and the actual package itself.
Okay.
So this is actually packaging it up, and it uses the Amazon API, sends it over, and requests an update of the application. So if we go back, we should see it updating.
Okay, cool.
It's like magic.
So does so last week I was talking to Jorge, and obviously we was talking about things like Octopus Deploy. Would this allow you to set up a host name or anything like that on the end server? So you need to, I don't know, you're at a point that this is ready to go live, because I presume this is on kind of like a, I don't know, the environment name, u-hangout2-env. Oh, you can see the URL there, elasticbeanstalk.com. But obviously I'm at a point that I want to make it live. Is there another flag or another option in that setting for you to go, okay, now go and use the live domain of uhangout2.com?
No.
So you'd have to actually physically jump onto the, I presume it creates a virtual machine?
Yeah, it's a virtual, well, I'm assuming it is, but it's called an EC2 instance.
So you can just RDP as if it's a physical box and...
Yeah. I mean, the way we've done it in the past is you basically just create a CNAME to this URL, and it will serve it automatically, because when the application is installed on the server within the environment, it's actually installed on the default website, so that any requests going through to the server, no matter what host you're using, that website will be served.
Okay. So it's using the wildcard hostname entry.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, cool.
So if I click on this URL, hopefully we should have a site in a couple of seconds. Hopefully. It's kind of a big drawback, I think, kind of the domain management within Elastic Beanstalk applications. But Amazon have something called Route 53, which is a kind of a domain manager. So you can use that to map domains within Amazon to wherever you want it to go to. So it kind of gets around that problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. So, okay. So there was a kind of... So is it still available, or is it sounds like the way you're talking, it's no longer available?
No, it's still there. It's
okay.
I've never used it myself. Apparently it's cool.
All right.
But I think a lot of people use that to kind of manage their domain within AWS. So we have an Umbraco application. And it's
fantastic.
Just the exact same thing as what you'd expect. So you can log into the back office. And yeah. So the great thing about Elastic Beanstalk is its auto scaling capabilities. So if we go to monitoring, we can get various statistics with regards to the site. So things like average latency, some requests, CPU utilization for your servers behind your load balancer, and other things like that. And we can actually set up rules against that, so that the environment, this thing, scales appropriately based on your rules. So say, for example, if we get a sharp increase in requests over a period of 10 minutes, we can ask the environment to spin up a new server automatically for us, and it will automatically deploy Umbraco for us. So the way we do that is, if we go to configuration, we go to scaling. So this is kind of what I was just talking about. So we're using a load balance environment. We can set up some auto scaling rules, so we can set the number of minimum servers behind our load balancer to 1 and maximum to 4. And these are the actual trigger rules. So, for example, say if we wanted to set up some rules so that if we get 9 an unusual increase in requests over a 10-minute period, we can say for it to add another server. So this is what I'm doing now.
So would it then go the opposite way? So when that peak of traffic, I don't know, you've had a TV campaign or something, or and kind of the requests are starting to kind of simmer down, will it be able to then kind of take those extra servers out and obviously not bill you for those extra servers that you don't need?
Yeah, that's correct. So for the actual trigger rule, we have an upper threshold and a lower threshold. So if it's in between, it stays as it is in terms of the number of servers we have. Yep. If it goes above the threshold for the actual load balancer itself, it creates another one. If it goes below, it will try and remove one to match our rules here. But it gives us some flexibility so that our site should automatically scale. I'll just change my notes. So there's a demo, and I'm going to kind of show how it works. So if I change the minimum instance count to 4, hopefully it should automatically create 4 servers for us. So I'll just let it finish doing that. And eventually we should see here that it will start to create some more EC2 instances, which are just our servers. Now, there is one slight problem with Umbraco in terms of distributed calling, that you need a predefined list of IP addresses in order for distributed calling to work, because with elastic beanstalk environments, there's no way of saying that if someone comes through on a specific host, for it to direct to one server instance only. And for example, we don't know the IP addresses of the servers behind the load balancer at any given time. Okay,
so you can't even with an API call to Amazon to figure out what those IPs of the spun up servers are at a given point?
You can. But because of the way distributed calling is designed in version 7 at the minute, because you need a predefined list before you deploy, it's difficult to get that predefined list because obviously you don't know it.
No, of course.
Yeah. So I created a little package which kind of mimics distributed calling, and it's called Extended Distributed Calling, the original name.
No, it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah. So all it does is, I'll just show you. So it actually uses the distributed calling services that Umbraco has.
Okay.
But just all it does is it attaches to like the publish events, the delete events and whatnot, and it makes a call to Amazon from whichever server it's on.
Yep.
And makes a call to Amazon and tries to find out the list of IP addresses that are currently within this.
Okay. So yeah. So pretty much you create the package. I was just saying that you could ping Amazon to find out what the IPs of the other servers are, and then you're using that with an event to then notify the other servers that there's an update, go and update as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Fantastic.
So I'm going to try and demo that now. Now hopefully it will work.
I'm sure it will.
Fingers crossed. So, just a demo. Obviously I changed these configuration rules to a minimum instance count of 4. Yep. So if I go to my EC2 instances screen, we should see 4. So I just organise by name. So we see we've got uHangout 2 and we've got 4 servers. So it's created 4 for us. If we were to put that back down to 1, after about 10 minutes, 3 of them should start to terminate themselves.
Okay. Yep.
So it's kind of cool in terms of what you can do with regards to scaling, I think. So going back to the editing side of it, I have another demo, which is number 3. So again, it's set up in the same manner. So we've got a minimum count of 4 and a maximum count of 4. And I've already installed this package into the application, which has already been deployed. It just requires some simple config to add into your web.config, whereby you just enable it, the user, and you can actually write your own providers if you want. So at the minute I'm using the Amazon distributed calling provider. So you could write an Azure one if you wanted to. I don't think it's possible because of the way Azure websites are designed, but you could use it with virtual machines in Azure if that's what you wanted to do.
Okay, cool.
So I have 4 servers in this environment. If I log into each of them and edit content on one of them, it should hopefully refresh on the other 3. Now, home. Let's see, Hangout. So we got remote desktop connections to each of the 4 servers behind the environment.
Yep.
Just go quickly get them all open.
So what would kind of, obviously, probably haven't got time to do a full demo of this, but in terms of, so what's kind of the common issue, or what kind of happens when you don't have this package installed? So is it just issues between content not getting pushed to all the environments? Do content editors see kind of discrepancies between content? What's kind of the main kind of issue or problem that happens?
Well, the kind of main issue is because you don't know which one of these servers you will be editing content on.
Mm-hmm.
So say, for example, if I edit content on this box, for example.
Yep, number 3.
This server knows to update its cache file because I'm performing the edit on this server.
Yep.
But because it doesn't know about the other 3 applications won't know to update its cache file as well.
Okay, so you, in theory, if you was a visitor to the site, you could potentially hit a box that doesn't have the updated content or cache.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
So the idea is for this is to literally just talk to the boxes to say, using the distributed calling services to say, we've changed content on this box, you need to update yours. I believe in a future version of Umbraco it's actually changing the way distributed calling works.
Okay.
So I think looking from the source code, it looks like you can kind of do what this package does. So I'll probably move away from my package and go to the way Umbraco uses it. So,
but no, it's a nice stopgap until obviously the core guys or whatever they do or intend to do comes native. So no, fantastic.
Cool. So I'm going to edit some content on this box. And hopefully it will display on the other ones. There we go. So if I just refresh this one, no. There we go. Umbraco overflow test.
Real.
Let's have a good whirl on this one. I hope this works. Hurrah!
Hurrah! Well done. Excellent. So this is now notified the other service. Look, there's an update. Go and update as well.
Yeah. And just to prove that, I will show the trace logs. Just open it. So right at the bottom, you should find a section where it talks about. Here we go. So I've just put the package in debug mode so we can actually see what it's doing, and you can see it's submitting calls to extended distributed calling, and it's found the 4 servers.
Mm-hmm.
It's using the internal IP addresses, and it just makes a call to each of them, including itself, to say that we'll update some content.
No, fantastic.
That's pretty much it. So
no, that's really nice.
It's my 2 cents on how to auto scale Umbraco sites. There are a couple of there's one other thing, obviously, that's probably wrong, is to do with media.
Okay.
Now,
So how do you handle media between these environments then? So if I'm uploading media to box 1, or how do the other boxes get the media as well to ensure that they all stay in sync?
So the easiest way is to create a dedicated EC2 instance, which kind of acts as a SAN.
Mm-hmm.
And then each time your new server is created, it will create a virtual directory within your website, which points to a specific location on that SAN.
Okay.
So if you go to upload a media item on number 1, for example, it will know to obviously update the media items across all 4 of them.
Okay.
So it's kind of a more traditional way of working in terms of kind of a trusted environment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the only other thing really. And then hopefully the Umbraco application should be completely scalable and automatically scalable, which is the important thing.
Yeah, and that's really nice. And like you said, it obviously with the addition of your package, it's quite relatively trivial to kind of get this to scale out quite quickly, which
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah. So that's that little section of the demo. I'll just move on to the kind of the Azure stuff and quickly go through that and kind of how I automate deployments within Azure websites without a team system server. So I want to try and do things like transformations, including web.config and other files.
Okay.
How to run my unit tests when I deploy the application to my Azure website. So if I just nip over to Azure. Oh dear.
Oh no. Is the Azure portal down?
Oh, this is unbelievable. Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yeah, there we go.
I'm not having much luck today. So I've got a new subscription that I've created. I've got an Umbraco Azure website, sorry, UHangout Azure website in there.
Okay, yep.
When it eventually loads, I'm going to kind of show you how you set up the actual website itself just by creating a new one. So if I go to websites,
Yep.
I'm going to quickly create a new one called UHangout. Well, it's already in use, that's probably yourself.
Yeah, probably.
Just create that region. So to create my website. So the only kind of important thing that I use with the website is kind of just linking it to a repository somewhere, right? Whether it's a GitHub repository, a Bitbucket one. I use Bitbucket, so well, that's my personal preference. So I'll basically set up this website to deploy from a Bitbucket repository this way. I just choose UHangout. You can choose the branch you want to deploy from. So I'm just going to use master for this example.
Okay. So you could use a release branch or a different branch. So anything that's in this branch or particular branch.
Yeah,
I presume Azure is just monitoring and then is just going to build and deploy.
Yeah, that's correct. So let's get rid of these. There we go. It's fetching the changes. Now rather than waiting for that to finish, I've got another test one.
Fantastic.
So this has been previously deployed from the same Bitbucket repository. If I browse to the application again, we should see the same site as we did before. Eventually.
Warming up.
Yeah. So there we go. Cool. So I'll talk about transformations and kind of deployment scripts in a second, but one cool thing that's been released with Azure websites at the minute is a thing called deployment slots.
Okay.
So it's the ability to create a different version of your website. So do you remember how previously in Amazon AWS, how I had kind of one environment within my application?
Yep.
You could have multiple ones. It's kind of the same thing.
Okay, so I suppose like a UAT environment or a development environment.
Yeah, that's
is that what the point of this is? Yeah.
Yeah. So within my Bitbucket repository, I've actually got two branches. I've got a development branch and a master branch. So this one's obviously using the master branch, which is kind of mimicking production. So if I want to create a development environment, I can add a new deployment slot. I've already got one called dev, so I'll call it something else. Dev2.
Original.
So I'm going to clone the actual website configuration from the first one.
Okay.
And it should create another website. So there we go. Which is just a deployment slot. So you can see over here we actually have 3 separate websites.
Okay, so
pretty cool.
the main kind of live site, I presume, dev, or we could just imagine it's UAT, and then obviously you've got dev2, the dev site.
Yeah. So if I go to the dev one I previously set up, I'll just show you where it's configured to pull down code from. So somewhere, there we go. Branch to deploy is the dev branch.
Cool. So I presume as well, so the environment, you could give it a different connection string possibly?
Yep.
So it could work with a different database?
Yep, I'll move on to that now.
Cool.
It's probably a good time. I'll just close this. Yep. Right. So this is the repository. That's actually deployed to the production website and the development website.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you kind of choose how to set it up in terms of transformations and tests, I use solution build configurations. So by default, we have debug and release. I've changed that to have dev and master.
So does it just need to match the name of the branch, or?
Almost. I'll show you that in a second. So using Azure websites, behind the scenes it creates a deployment script, which is, it automatically works out which solution to build and which project to deploy. But you can actually get to that deployment script and modify it and add things to it.
Okay, cool.
Which is cool. So web.config isn't actually an issue because I've got dev and master, and the way that I think MS Build works, it will automatically transform those files for me.
Mm-hmm.
So say, for example, development, I've got some transformations going on.
Yep, a database or whatever.
Yeah, so say, for example, if I wanted to turn on debugging for Log4net on the development website, but not on the production environment. So I've downloaded the deployment script, which is here. I'll open it up in something else. It's probably a bit easy to read. So here we go. This is generated by the Azure website, and it gets interesting when you get down to this section here. I don't know if you can see that. Okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I'm just trying to skim read it. Yep.
Right. So the first step would be to restore any NuGet packages.
Yep.
Based on your solution. Now this step I've actually added myself. So what it is, it's 2 copy commands, which basically takes the current branch that the Azure website is using.
Yep.
And copies the correct config file across. So it's not really a transform, it's just a copy based on whatever you select within here.
Yep.
So this value is actually passed as this variable.
Okay.
So it just makes things easier, so you can obviously transform things.
Yep.
The second one is actually building the project. Sorry, the third one is building the project. Now the fourth and fifth one are actually related to unit tests. I've added these in myself. So the first one actually builds the unit test project.
Okay.
And the fifth one, using Visual Studio's test application, it runs any unit tests within
the
my
DLL.
project.
Yep.
So it's a really cool way of kind of mimicking build server actions that you commonly do with TeamCity and other things. So obviously, if my unit tests fail, then I don't want the site to actually deploy.
Yep, of course.
Which is helped with this line. And then Kudu Sync is something Azure related, is an application in the background which syncs your website with your repository.
Okay.
Sorry, the other way around. So that's how I've got around that. So as a demo, I'm just going to quickly take my test project, add a new unit test. I'm going to make it fail. So save that. Ooh, hold on.
So you're just committing the change to the Git repository, and you're just going to push it to the dev branch, I presume.
Yes, that's correct. So what was changed? Just need to save my project. Cool. There we go. So. Sorry, the development branch on the Bitbucket repository. And if we go over to our website, go to the development one, go to deployments. So it's fetching the changes, the push we just made. it will try and go through all those steps. So it'll run the deployment command. Then hopefully it shouldn't deploy the website because my test has failed.
So how do we kind of get this feedback from Azure that a test has failed? Is it just from this dashboard here that this deploying script is just going to give us an error message or some kind of notification that something isn't working right?
Yeah, it doesn't say in great detail unless you actually look at the log within this build. So for example here, you can actually expand the deployment. It gives you a summary of what's happened, but just over here there's a view log button.
Okay.
And it just shows you what it's done.
What's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. You could, for example, within your deployment script, within your deployment script, create another step which actually takes the actual log file and, I don't know, emails it you or
yeah.
Or something.
So, is this PowerShell that is running, or is it just normal? I'm just trying to.
I don't really know.
Don't really know. Fantastic.
No, it's just one of them. You just kind of look at it and go, "Oh, okay, that's how you do an if statement."
Okay. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. So hopefully, there we go. So obviously my deployment's failed. If I look at the logs, where is it gone? Just refresh the page. But I mean, the great thing about this deployment script file is you can customize your deployments however you.
Yeah, so in theory you could do literally anything you want.
Yeah, I find it really helpful.
So is this file easy to find, easy to get to? Where does it live?
Yeah, so if you've previously done a normal...
Oh, word on Azure.
So if you've previously done a deployment before, the generated deployment file is actually in the website FTP location.
So if we connect over FTP, we can then browse the directories and then be able to find this. Is it deploy.cmd that it's called?
Yep. So I'll just show you how to set it up. So in the root of the repository, there's a .deployment file.
Mm-hmm.
So I just open that up, where you just literally pass it this and the location of the deployment script, which happens to be in there. Oh, no, don't do that. So yeah, and it will just literally run through this, and that's how Azure copies your repository the website in the repository to the Azure website. And I'm probably going to end it here because
Azure has decided to freak out on you.
Yeah.
Good timing. But I trust you that we can view that log file and get back to it. So fantastic. No, it was a really good demo, and it's interesting to see the different approaches. Obviously, with using something like Amazon, and then obviously the kind of not the more cowboy approach, but the more kind of streamlined approach of using obviously the kind of the batch file, the command file to to do a deployment process or script.
Yeah. Cool.
So we've got. Are you still screen sharing? Hang on.
I think so. I'm just trying to get it off. 1 second.
There we go. Now I can see you.
You can see me?
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I certainly can. So we've got a question from Sebastian. He asks, an impressive amount of gear is behind you, Dan. Which band do you play in? So obviously, I think he's referring to all the kind of the instruments and the speakers and the amps sitting behind you.
I don't play in a... Well, I kind of do play in a band, but it's just a little pet project. I used to play in a band called Stop the Blackout. I played in them for about 10 years. We stopped a couple of years ago. Yeah, it was good. I just kind of do it for fun now. Just kind of record in my mini homemade studio, whatever it is.
Fantastic. Fantastic. No, I think just looking at the other questions coming in. No, that's it for this week, I think. But it was a fantastic 45 minutes on deployments in the cloud.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to talk.
No worries, Dan. Good to speak to you, and catch up with you soon.
Yeah, same to you. See you later.
Excellent. See you later. Bye. Bye.